Matt Leone's dead, you guys. So hi, about a month ago, I put out a video about the Bon Appetit test kitchen, and a lot has happened in the last month since I put out that video about the Bon Appetit test kitchen. This video here is the unscripted disaster of a follow-up where I break it all down and talk about it. Don't drink to solve your problems. This is just a prop. It's a visual prop. It does have alcohol in it, but it's a visual prop. I do have some notes, though. I don't have a script, but I do have some notes. Mostly just because a lot has happened, and I want to start with breaking down just this sort of timeline of events. I will do my best to give you the highlights, and then I'll do my best in editing to show as much of the original source material as I can. So I put out a video on May 31st about the Bon Appetit test kitchen. And on the same day, Adam Rapoport, the editor-in-chief at the time of Bon Appetit, came out with an article that said food has always been political. This is in response to 6 days earlier where George Floyd was murdered by a police officer. On Friday morning at 10:30 a.m., several of us editors at Bon Appetit jumped on a Zoom call to discuss how we're going to cover the uprising sparked by George Floyd's killing. As a food brand, we're often talking about recipes, cooking techniques, emerging restaurants, but we also know that food is inherently political, and there's no getting around that. In recent years, we at BA have been reckoning with our blind spots when it comes to race. We still have work to do, but one thing I know is that our editorial mission, besides recipes and home cooking, is to cover the most important stories of the moment as they relate to food. What I don't think Adam was expecting was what happened a few days later. On June 8th, writer Tamli Teklemariam posted a photo of Rapoport in brownface. The important thing to understand with this photo is that the photo itself isn't necessarily the problem on its own. And when I say that, I mean the photo is bad, but it's representative of something larger and more systemic than one person wearing blackface or brownface 16 years ago. What it is representative of is a sort of systemic racism within Bon Appetit. Tammy and other freelance writers, a number of articles that they had pitched for the Bon Appetit constantly got rejected because it wasn't fitting of the brand or something similar like that. It's just a cover for racism if we're being honest with ourselves. The bigger story of the day, though, is still yet to come. Sola El-Wayley, who's on the videos all the time, I didn't mention her in my video, we'll get back to that, goes on Instagram and basically says, "I'm angry and disgusted by the photo of Rapoport in brownface. I've asked for his resignation. This is just a symptom of the systemic racism that runs rampant within the Condé Nast as a whole. I've been at Bon Appetit for 10 months. I'm 35 years old and have over 15 years of professional experience," which on that, I believe she owned a restaurant. She might have opened that restaurant in New York City. "I was hired as an assistant editor at $50K, which is terrible in New York City, to assist mostly white editors with significantly less experience than me. I've been pushed in front of video as a display of diversity. In reality, currently only white editors are paid for their video appearances. None of the people of color have been compensated." So that means not just Sola, but Priya, but Gabby, but Rick, but Christina Che, tons of other people. The reason that was given allegedly was that it doesn't have to do with race directly, it has to do with how certain people are hired by the company. So some people work for Condé Nast, some people work with Bon Appetit, their contracts are negotiated differently, so on and so forth. But it doesn't change the fact that the white people are being paid a certain way, and the not white people are being paid a different way. That's racist. Alex Lau, Vinnie Cross, a number of other people that worked at Bon Appetit came out and basically said, yeah, that's why we quit. Once all of this came out, Adam Rapoport resigned. "I'm stepping down as editor-in-chief of Bon Appetit to reflect on the work that I need to do as a human being and allow Bon Appetit to get to a better place." They name Amanda Shapiro as the interim editor in the meantime. It should be noted that she is also white. With all these statements coming out on June 8th, the entire test kitchen refused to film new videos, work on new videos, do anything for new videos until all this was resolved. And since June 8th, no new videos have been posted to the Bon Appetit Test Kitchen YouTube channel. 2 days later, staff made a statement on the Bon Appetit and Epicurious website. Epicurious is Bon Appetit's sister publication. "We, the staffs of Bon Appetit and Epicurious, want to address our readers, contributors, and peers in light of Adam Rapoport's resignation as editor-in-chief. The deeply offensive photo circulating of Adam is horrific on its own, but also speaks to the broader and long-standing impact of racism at these brands. We have been complicit with a culture we don't agree with and are committed to change. Our mastheads have been far too white for far too long. As a result, the recipes, stories, and people we've highlighted have too often come from a white-centric viewpoint. At times we have treated non-white stories as not newsworthy or trendy. Other times we have appropriated, co-opted, and Columbused them. This goes back to the freelance writers we were talking about earlier. While we've hired more people of color, we've continued to tokenize many BIPOC staffers and contributors in our videos and on our pages. Many new BIPOC hires have been in entry-level positions with little power, this is referencing Sola, and we will be looking to accelerate their career advancement and pay. Black staffers have been saddled with contributing racial education to our staffs and appearing in editorial and promotional photo shoots to make our brand seem more diverse. We haven't properly learned from or taken ownership of our mistakes, but things are going to change. Unfortunately, on June 10th, more things come out. Information came out about Alex Delaney running a blog years ago. He made a number of deeply sexist comments, but even worse, he baked a cake for a friend with a Confederate flag on them as a gift for them moving down south. Just lovely. Andy Baragani made a lengthy statement on this particular matter, but then was also called out by writer Elise Whitney for using editorial privilege to cut or modify her stories when he shouldn't be allowed to do that. Now, things like this kept coming out, different things, people talking. There was a thing that came out about Mac Ducker of Condé Nast as well. And I was listening to all of these and trying to figure out where the endpoint was. And you know, the real answer is there is no endpoint, but the real endpoint for me was on June 25th when Matt Hunze was suspended from Bon Appetit. And the reason why he was put under investigation was just for speaking out and defending his peers at Bon Appetit. He gave updates about how the Zoom meetings were going and criticizing some of the decisions that were made. Because he went out publicly and criticized things and informed the public on what was going on, he was suspended and placed under investigation. Why they didn't suspend and investigate the racism part instead of the Matt Hunze part remains to be seen. The reason why I felt I can stop the timeline here and make this video now is because Matt Hunze is sort of the symbolic birth of the Bon Appetit test kitchen in many ways. And that isn't to say that he did it all on his own. He certainly did not. But his editing and his specific production approach to the first episode of It's Alive sort of informed the entire rest of the test kitchen up to, June 8th. Which is kind of what I talked about in that first video. So seeing him get suspended, the test kitchen is very clearly not going to be the same way that it was before. So now that we've talked about the timeline of events up to this point, now let's talk about what happens next. So that's the next part of this video, what happens next. Like I said, it's pretty obvious to me that the Bon Appetit test kitchen won't be the way it was before, which is a super interesting place for my video to be in, I suppose, because it's a very interesting time capsule of that time. But the thing I want to stress is that while I did make this love letter to this brand, any future change that comes to Bon Appetit, while it may not fully solve the problem, I don't expect it to. I expect it to be continuous and ongoing and ever evolving. But whatever change comes to Bon Appetit in the future will be for the better. So even though the videos that we have come to grow and love may not continue, or at least not continue in the same capacity, it's a unilaterally better thing for the brand to go this way than to stay in the way it was. And the reason why is because there's a lot of stuff that we didn't see going on behind the scenes, or perhaps some people watching this video did notice. So in that case, then you fully well know that this is for the better to some degree. Hopefully. That's the main thing in terms of what's next for Bon Appetit, is that hopefully something better, something more positive, and like everyone, we're just always learning and evolving and growing. So instead of saying, Bon Appetit, terrible brand, never gonna support them ever again, I think the better approach is to look critically at the things that you enjoy and decide what you personally want to do about it. So for me, I'll probably end up watching future Bon Appetit videos, but I'm going to continue to fight for Matt Hunze to be rehired and Sola to be paid fairly and more representation within the brand, because that's what I would like to see. The important thing is that everyone is just aware of the reality of what's going on as these things become more publicized. So with that, I want to go into part 3, which is about my video. which obviously small potatoes compared to, Bon Appetit, Condé Nast. There's so many people that work there, so many people that put tons of time into all of the articles, all of the, the magazines, the physical magazines, and the videos. And it's not just Bon Appetit, right? Epicurious is the sister channel, and then there's tons of other brands at Condé Nast that likely have been affected to some degree by everything going on within the organization over the past however long, presumably, since its inception to some degree. So it's small potatoes, but it's the only thing that I can really speak about in terms of what I can do or what I have done, because I don't work at Condé Nast, I don't work at Bon Appetit. All I can do is use my voice to say how I feel about things. So the reason why I made this video is because I wanted to critically look back at my last video. It felt wrong to just leave that unilateral message of positivity where it was, when that isn't really representative of the reality there. So I want to pose a few questions. So the first question, which we've already kind of answered, is how diverse is the Bon Appetit test kitchen? And I think we've kind of established that it's not very diverse. So a lot of the personalities that we saw as the front-facing, like the head of shows on the camera, most of them tend to be white, and a decent amount of them tend to have the same sort of culinary and geographical background. And the important thing to note here is that doesn't mean that the people that were in those positions weren't talented or anything like that. It's more of just a thing of, if you're making a food magazine, food is inherently, like even Adam Rappaport said, food is inherently political, but it's also inherently diverse, right? It comes from all over the world. So if you're making a food magazine and your target audience for that is a very global and diverse audience, you would think that you would want your staff to be also global and diverse, and that just isn't that. So then the second question is, how diverse is my video about Bon Appetit, the video that I posted? I think the instinct would be to say, okay, well, if Bon Appetit is not super diverse, then my video then is also not super diverse. And that is a statement on the accuracy of my video's representation of the brand. But that's where I'm going to disagree with you for a little bit, because like Sola's name wasn't mentioned in the video at all. I don't think she was in the video, period. Priya appeared in the video once, she wasn't mentioned. Christina Che appeared a few times in the video but wasn't mentioned. I love Rick's chocolate chip cookie recipe, and I definitely used some footage from it, but I certainly didn't mention that in the video. And there's tons of other people that were not mentioned in the video. I'm inclined to say that no, I think my video is actually less diverse in terms of its representation than Bon Appetit was. And Bon Appetit, as we mentioned, is already not diverse enough to represent the audience it's trying to serve. So that's a step further backwards, is my conclusion. So then the next question is then, what does that say about me? And this is a super, super interesting question. And I think the reason why, at least for me, is because it's about me. It's about my continued growth and learning. And I think with not just diversity, like we're always continually learning and growing, right? That's what I said the brand's gonna do, right? It's probably gonna keep learning and keep growing and keep changing over time. No one's solving racism overnight. That's just impossible. So I think the ability for me to go back to a video I made literally a month ago and say, hey, there are some things I regret about this because I have learned new information. The reason why I'm saying this is because that is like the most beautiful thing about doing this whole YouTube thing in the first place. I do it to learn and grow and change. And you might see this throughout my videos, is that there's a lot of times where I've made a video, a few years ago, and then a few years later I'll kind of make a different video that sort of hits at the same topic. And the reason why is because I've learned and I've grown, and I want to share that growth with the world, or, in 3,000 subscribers or whatever. So I'm here today to say there are some things I should have done differently. Even if it was going to stay a love letter, right? There are still some things I could have done differently. But now we have to ask another question, which is, why was it even a love letter in the first place? Or rather, my question is, why did I fall for it, right? And when I say fall for it, I mean this thing I say a lot, and maybe I'm saying I say it a lot because this is like the third take of doing this because of technical difficulties, but you know, no one likes to know how their soup is made, right? Because there's always something going on in the kitchen that you don't want to know about. And that's not just true for food, you know, appropriately for Bon Appetit. That's true for literally anything that anyone makes ever. Whether it be, you know, a physical thing like a computer or a glass or a drink in the glass, right? Or anything like that. It can also be the media we consume, the entertainment we enjoy, all of it. We don't want to know how it's made. And when I say we don't want to know how it's made, I'm kind of being tongue-in-cheek. We kind of do want to know how it's made, right? But the reason why I say you don't want to know is because you're always going to be disappointed by it. Someone's being exploited, something's wrong, something's not ethical going on behind the scenes, and there's always something messed up going on in the background, right? And so the important thing to understand when you choose to buy something or watch something or anything really is just understand that there may be something in how your soup is made that you may not enjoy. And then your decision to buy that, watch that, spend time on it, whatever, is predicated on your awareness of how that soup is made, or being okay with how that soup is made, or being okay with not knowing how your soup is made. For me, as someone that tends to have a more cynical viewpoint of the world, I guess, I'm just more surprised at myself than anything else. In hindsight, that I thought that for whatever reason that the Bon Appetit test kitchen, that was a perfectly pristine organization and there was nothing wrong with it, and that there wasn't anything that needed to improve or change or be better outside of, you know, maybe things that I view about, you know, say corporate media as a whole. I didn't think there were any deep-seated issues like this within Bon Appetit or Condé Nast. And I look back at that now as a sort of blissful ignorance, right? I wonder why I had it, or why I thought that was the case. And the answer comes from the end of that video. I know this video may be seen by some as a little too optimistic for its own good, but we're living in tough and confusing times. We have to keep our chins up and look ahead to a brighter future. I hope this brightened up your day like a plate of fluffy pancakes. The next videos are going to look at AAA entertainment with a bit more of a critical lens than this video here. Stay tuned. So that, to me, comes off as a form of escapism, right? 2020 is a very complicated year. There's a lot of really bad stuff going on. And I think the ability to just escape the world for a bit to something that could be viewed as pristine or perfect or innocent, it is nice. It's a nice feeling to want to have. And that's not only what I wanted that video to be, but it's also representative of what I wanted Bon Appetit to be. Obviously, finding out that that isn't the case is a bit heartbreaking, but it's, the more I think about it, the more not surprising it is or should be. It's important to not only think things or believe things or do things or take action or do whatever you believe in, but also understand what brought you there and why you're doing the things you're doing, and maybe second guess yourself a little bit. This was certainly a very messy video, but I feel like it was something I needed to say on top of the video that was already made. I hope you gained something from this as well. Maybe not with Bon Appetit specifically, but with something. And like I said, the next few videos are going to look at some entertainment with a bit more of a critical lens. There's a little bit of a hint as to what the next video is about in this video. So if you know what it is, cool. This Bon Appetit was originally going to be the first video of like a trilogy. And I don't know whether it'll still pan out as being like a real trilogy, as it were, but we'll see how it pans out. The next video is already like well into production. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll call it here. I'll finish the drink. I'll enjoy it like a drink should be enjoyed.